Okay, you're good. You're live.
We're live, you said, Taylor? I think she said,
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, you're live.
Okay, thank you.
Allison, did you want to ask the questions that you had?
Yep, thanks. When I was reading both the majority and minority opinions from the last one, first, although I've read them both, I couldn't identify what the difference in the opinions were. So that's one question. The other was that both mentioned a charter revision commission that was supposed to begin in January of 2021. And they supposed that that commission and the results of that commission, so therefore our commission might be in a better place to answer some of the questions about the changing mayoral role and the role of the alderman. And so to me, those are sort of scope questions of what are they doing, which then influences how much should they be compensated for that. So one, what's the difference in the opinions? And two, is that charter revision ongoing?
I do not know the status of any charter revision commission, charter review commission. That's something we'd have to, unless Carrie has an answer to that, we'd have to take back and see what we could find out.
Yeah,
I know that over time go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just saying I'm not sure of the status of the Charter Revision Commission, so that's something I would have to look into.
Yeah.
I got the impression it had something to do with hiring the city manager and the city manager taking on certain roles that the mayors used to take on. And they wanted to see, how much that relieved the current mayor from certain responsibilities. And I mean, that was my interpretation, but I'm not exactly sure if that's correct or not. So,
well, that's an interesting point to bring up because the mayor, city manager, mayor council form of government does take different forms in various municipalities. Some are really clear. Some don't really address the distinction of roles all that clearly. And some of what you'll see is that the mayor may serve more as a chief executive officer as opposed to being a voting member of a council. So in our case, our mayor is a voting member of our city council, and therefore is one of 9 votes on a number of pieces of legislation, as opposed to some jurisdictions where the mayor does not serve in that level of function. I don't know if you want to get into that level of exploration or detail, when looking at other jurisdictions and the information from them. I can tell you that there are very few full-time mayors in Maryland to even compare to. And,
well, going back to Allison's question, it seems to me we're sort of forced to ask about it because it was in their reports in 2016. So
yeah.
But them starting in January of 2021 doesn't give you much chance to even, if it's just forming or, to influence what work that you do. That's kind of a logistical issue more than anything else.
well, that's true too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe, I think that your comments were right on target with what those opinions were trying to express. Maybe the more general question is, has the mayor's role changed over the past 4 years?
Right.
And I don't know who can answer that question.
I can. Will there be somebody on the call tomorrow night that can answer that question, Tricia?
I'll ask the city manager. It's probably the person that would be most likely able to handle that. I mean, the mayor's not been here more than his term, so it's not like that would be an inside view. I'm sure that council would have a conversation from their perspective about that. But also I just want to help you as a staff person stay within your charge too. And even though that might have been part of the report from last year, it's not really clear in that report whether that was intended to be influential or it's just something to be mindful of.
Mhm, mhm. But if the mayor's role has changed, oh, I'm sorry, I have an echo somewhere. If the mayor's role has changed in the last 4 years, if it's supposedly perhaps decreased because we now have the city manager, then the compensation would seem to be different. That seems to be in our wheelhouse.
Well, I would
Yeah.
tell you that the mayor's duties are spelled out in the charter and the code,
Mhm.
as well as the city manager's duties. So part of the evidence would be in whether that has materially changed
Yeah.
legislatively in the last 4 years.
Well, the fact that it was in the previous commission's report and suggesting that we should be looking at it 4 years later tells me that we should be asking questions about it at the very least.
So in light of the question and in light of what I've just said, that you could at least track things from a legislative perspective and what might have
Mhm.
been changes to the roles and responsibilities, duties, et cetera, between the city manager and the mayor, we can produce that for you.
Okay.
That'd
How
be
about
good.
that? Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great, because then if there were any thoughts to change based upon the role and duties, it's codified, which is great.
You would expect some change there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so I'll make sure that we get that to you. Or at least answer the question.
Okay. Tricia or Joe, were you able to, or do you understand the differences between the majority and minority opinions?
You know,
Perhaps
I was
just-
curious about that as well, and I started going through it. It was hard for me to compare because I don't have printed copies.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, I was going back and forth. The only thing I could figure out was the one was the minority report gave me the impression that they weren't so sure that they should be paying the mayor as much as they were paying them. And there was no discussion about that in the majority report. Right.
Right, right.
And it goes back to the other question about the change in the charter. So I don't know if that's an accurate interpretation or not, but that's maybe Ian knows.
Maybe.
We're talking
Welcome,
about
Ian.
the differences
Sorry
in the
for being
minority.
late.
We're talking about the differences in the minority and the majority reports from 2016.
Just looking at that. Yeah. Let me pull it up.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Ian.
No, no.
I'm wondering if it was just labeled
Just pull it
incorrect,
up. Yeah.
because it looks nearly identical. So what I'll do is, Ashley's someone that handled the commission last go around. I'll talk to her and see if there's maybe, because I mean, I'm just looking at it now. I looked at it before. It looks like it's identical. There's even sort of a part where a sentence isn't finished on both of them under the mayor section. So
Yeah.
it might be just that she sent over the wrong versions, or she accidentally had one labeled incorrectly, but I'll double check and see if I can pull the finalized ones instead of maybe the Microsoft Word ones, which may be drafts, and send them to you guys. I'll look into that right now.
That'd be great.
Carrie, you would make me feel better if that was the case.
I mean, just looking at it, I don't see a difference at all. So I think you're onto something there.
Okay,
I
and
know she sent you the Word version, so you had that to work with as a template and recommended that you use the majority. If you were going to,
yep.
you know, work, literally use it as the guts of what you're about to report.
Okay.
Now, in reviewing the minutes from the 2016 meeting minutes,
Mhm.
I saw that there was a public meeting held with the commission.
Yeah, so Hillary will be, using, on the agenda with posting, there's a method for people to email their comments. That's what we do in public meetings now in this Zoom environment, in this virtual world. And so she'll do a similar offer with tomorrow night's meeting.
Okay,
And so you may just get your public comment through an email or some kind of filling out the form so that
Okay,
you're
good.
getting it in the written form, in the written word, instead of somebody testifying.
thank you.
Now, I can tell you before, when this commission met, that it was in a conference room and they were published as public meetings, but they weren't attended. And so this just might be a little better opportunity for people to both attend by watching the YouTube and making comments. So that may be the difference.
Tricia, when you're looking at any change in the role of the mayor, could you also take a look at that for the aldermans?
Yeah.
Also, in some of the comments, they were discussing about constituent representation, but that's not called out in the charter at all. And so there was a discussion of what they should be compensated for. So if there was any change in role, that would be great.
Okay. I can tell you that I think recently there was legislative change with regard to how to spend their discretionary fund, and but not their roles, but more of what constitutes training, what constitutes expenditure. So that's part of why you got the audit information that Ashley sent on to you, that our finance department put together.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see expense report wise what has been charged back to the city under those funds to support the expenditure of those funds.
Okay.
And then the last time around, the council went from 13,500 as their base salary to 15,000 when they blended in a $1,500 meals and expense related items that were separately accounted for in the past. And so that was there was more that was covered by discretionary funds, and they just simply they just have to absorb that themselves without going through a receipt method of getting that support.
Yeah, I saw that they were trying to actually decrease some of the paperwork.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it was never apparently it was never really enough to fully compensate for the expenses, but then to spend I think that was part of the conversation that the council members had with the commission, which is just the amount of time that took and the process it took to go through was really kind of taking away from their constituent services and time they had available to their overall charge. And the commission heard that and made the appropriate change, made the relative change.
That's my recollection too, right? Like the preceding council, it was very much like you had a set amount of money to go to MML meetings or to go to something like that. But it was pretty limited
Right.
what you could use it on. And there was definitely a desire of a lot of people to say, like, I have to pay for a cell phone bill. So my constituents get a hold of me and things like that. I'd like to have the flexibility to spend that money on sort of other,
Yeah,
to do the job instead of just trainings, formal trainings.
right, right. Practical expenses, office expenses.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the expense report that you sent to us, those expenses are outside of their compensation package, right?
So yes. Well, not outside their compensation package, but outside their salary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are these amounts budgeted in the city's budget? Is there a cap to them?
Yes.
I don't think I saw that. Is that cap within our commission? Or not?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, it is something that you look at as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And just from memory, I think, right, like unless it's changed in some way, but right, like for the alderman at least, it's a salary line, which we have some purview over. They're in the state retirement plan, which obviously is sort of locked in based on your salary. But I mean, and then it is this account for additional expenses or in doing
Yeah.
is the other item that's
Yeah, it's referred to as allowances. So it's compensation and allowances.
Yep.
Okay.
And with regard to the Maryland State Retirement System, there's not a requirement that they belong. The Maryland State Retirement System, not that long ago, actually, has allowed for elected officials to opt out.
And I remember like a number of the colleagues who were already retired couldn't even opt into it anyway because they were.
They could not. Yeah, if you were already drawing from the Maryland State Retirement System because of whatever occupation
Exactly.
you might have
Yeah.
already had, you were not. That's correct, Ian.
I mean, though, I got 8 years at $500 a month or whatever, right? Salary, so, or something.
Well, as of 2011, July 1st of 2011, you have to have 10 years
I know.
to vest. So for an elected official that's term limited, which
Yeah.
is not the city, but if
Yeah.
you're term limited, you got to get 2.5 terms in,
It's
2.5,
Yeah. So true.
or you're going to be vested. So I think finally there was legislative, to make any change to the Maryland State Retirement System, it must go through the state legislature.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that one succeeded. But it's only for elected officials. That is not the case
So now-
for,
That's interesting.
so how do you want to proceed? Do you want me to share some highlights of information I've gotten through research? Do you want, you tell me.
That would be great.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I noticed in the report, one of the comments made was about making sure that the if you want to start with city managers' pay, and then we'll do elected officials. Is that good? So the city manager currently has, according to the commission, the recommendation was 140,000 to 180,000 as a range.
Mhm.
And then there's also the provision that every 2 years, a cost of living increase can be provided. I think I made the comment last Thursday that that's a bit of a challenge administratively. It's like, what does that really mean? It would be good as a commission to try and clarify that or determine if you intend to make any changes to a plainer language. So administratively, we know what we're doing. But if you want to make sure that the city manager is paid more than the highest paid department head, I sent you a salary scale, I'm pretty sure. So you could see currently what the pay rates are for the A scale is our general scale. So it's basically everybody but police and fire. And that includes our exempt service employees and our civil service employees. So department heads are in the exempt service and are eligible to move through that pay scale. The department heads are at A20. And there are some managers that are at 19. But otherwise, they're all of our highest paid, most highly compensated individuals are at the 20 grade. So the police chief is a P20, the fire chief is a F20, Department of Public Works, Director of Public Works is an A20, Transportation is an A20, and so on. So I looked at a comparison of the deputy level, like in the fire department, the deputy fire chief is a F18, and the department head is the fire chief is an F20. The difference between their two rates of pay is 15.78%. Between the police chief and the deputy major, the deputy police chief, it is 9.68%. And then if you make a similar assumption, this isn't true at all department levels. Not everybody's got an assistant director or has that going, but that's more in the larger departments. But if you compare an A20 to an F20,
Tricia, are these current differences? Okay.
they are. Yes. So on the general scale, comparing an A20 to an A18, it's 15.5% difference in pay. I'm giving that to you informationally, whatever you do with it, comparing it to the city manager. The city manager currently is making $180,000. So if you compare the city manager to the police chief, the city manager is making 4.3, the maximums, not individuals, but the maximums is 4.36%.
Could you say that again, Tricia?
If you compare the maximums for the police chief pay scale and the maximum pay for the city manager, it's 4.36%. If you compare the maximum for the city manager to the maximum for the fire chief at an F20, it's 4.8%.
More.
I have a question concerning the compensation for like department heads, everybody underneath the city manager. Who determines the salary? I mean, we're not charged to choose the salaries, are we? I mean,
No.
that would be the
No,
city
not
manager.
for the rest of city government. That's my charge. Through compensation studies and through the salary scales need to be legislated ultimately.
So our role is to pick a scale that the salaries and the compensation have to be within. Is that correct? Or
What I'm trying to do is based on the survey, or not the survey, but the report from the last compensation council compensation commission. I'm trying to give you information because there was a statement in there about the city manager's pay relative to the highest paid department heads.
okay.
So I'm just trying to give you calculations or, comparisons so that
Okay. All
whatever
right.
you do with it, you at least are informed.
All right. I got you.
Okay. And so the difference between an A20 maximum of the scale and the maximum for the city manager, the difference is 5.32%.
Now, are you going to share the information that you have with us before the meeting tomorrow? Or are we?
Do you want me to just put it in an informational document or a spreadsheet or something like that?
Well, if it's not too much trouble, I mean, if it's a lot of trouble, I'll just take more notes, but
Okay. Well, what I was trying to do this evening is get enough information to you for
Yeah.
discussion so I could then figure out what else you want me to provide and could, be more directed in what I give back to you. So if you're not I'm saying this out loud. If you're not interested in,
no, I'd like to
fine.
see that information. I mean,
Yeah.
in a spreadsheet or something that's, I can read.
Sure, I can do that.
Tricia, are you pulling this from the FY 2021 annual pay scale longevity information that you sent to us?
Not the longevity. I'm looking at the longevity information on the bottom of that scale does not apply to exempt service, only to civil service employees. All department heads are in the exempt service.
Okay.
So for the civil service employees, the last 5 steps, depending on which group it is, are designated for longevity.
Now, was some of this information already provided, Tricia?
I provided you with the salary scale. I'm just
Oh,
telling
okay.
you,
So
if you did the
I-
calculations, this is what they would be.
Well, let me go through that before you send anything. I mean, at least to me, maybe everybody else wants something, but I really didn't focus in on that for this meeting,
That
so.
I understand. I've been trying to figure out what might help you in your work since you have very little time to get it done.
Gotcha.
But again, I don't want to presume what you need. I'm just trying to, give information that might help conversationally determine which direction you want to go in terms of information needed from me. Okay. So what I can also inform you is that I did pull from what we call a benchmark salary survey. We belong to a public HR group that's called the Local Government Personnel Association. That it's a volunteer organization, and we get asked questions about, what are you paying this particular job classification? Can you match it? What do you have to share, so that we don't have to call each other all the time and try to get this information. So I pulled from the Chief Administrative Officer. And since we're still talking about city manager, I thought I would share with you that for the city of Annapolis, the closest I could come for our other comparators are Baltimore City, which is a very large jurisdiction, and their compensation is really kind of out of kilter with every other jurisdiction. I just want to say that on the top end. So I've got compared to City of Annapolis is Baltimore City, College Park, Gaithersburg, and unfortunately Rockville did not respond, but I think I separately have information from Rockville. And then Anne Arundel County, if you're interested, because we are, a municipality within the county, seated within Anne Arundel County. So for Annapolis City, we know that the maximum pay rate for our city manager is $180,000. For Baltimore City, the maximum salary is $280,700. For the city of College Park, that city manager's pay rate is set by their council and is currently $190,295.
Do they have a mayor?
They do. Their mayor is paid. Hey, there. Here we go. Their mayor is paid $10,500 per year, and their council members are paid $7,000.
Interesting.
Gaithersburg pays their city manager $208,000, $2,008.45 a year. And then I'm missing my note. I don't know where I put it for Rockville, but I'll find that out for you.
I'm sorry, Gaithersburg pays them 2008?
208,045.
208,000.
Oh,
208,000. Yeah. I do know that City of Bowie is like the highest paid city manager all
Really?
around. And
Nice.
yes, last time I did this, it was incredibly generous. But I don't know what the current city manager is being paid, so I have to track that down. It is not something that I can get out of their ordinance at all, out of their code, because it is strictly negotiated with the council. Now, some jurisdictions have in their language that the council, the mayor, and the city manager are, even though their rates of pay may be set in their code or their charter, that they have provisions for CPI. And so what I did is I went back to 2016 forward, and I'm going to give you the CPI for each of those years. So for 2016, the CPI was 1.1. For 2017, the CPI was 1.5. For 2018, the CPI was 2.2. For 2019, the CPI was 2.3. And for 2020, it was 1.4. Now, they all make reference to CPI. You know, those of us who do compensation work, a lot of times we rely on the ECI because benefit cost sometimes outpaces cost of living. And so if employers have to kind of make up the difference on benefit costs are just rising at a higher rate, there's something called an employment cost index that allows you to make adjustments based on benefit costs. So I'm just throwing that out as just another piece of information.
were the ECIs substantially different than the CPI?
I didn't get the ECI information because, again, I was really tying it more to how other jurisdictions make legal reference.
Okay.
And if you want me to do that, I can go back and do that.
It's okay.
Again, I didn't want to presume. I wanted to ask first. Now, I did find some changes to in trying to update the survey that you were given from 2016. I reached out to MML, tried to get them to maybe do the work and send it to me. That didn't work out for me because what they have now is they have like an online survey tool.
Mhm.
And that online survey tool is accessible to me as long as we pay for it. And when I asked which jurisdictions had participated, a good third of the ones I was interested in finding out don't participate. So it was almost like, well, why would I enter into a cost that's, about $250 in order to get a couple of jurisdictions that I could probably find out myself. And wouldn't really add a whole lot to what you're doing because again, the rate of increase is either none or only adjusted by a CPI with some spending limits that's in their language of their ordinance. But it does seem to be that the more likely change agents are Baltimore City, which is substantial. And the current mayor, the new mayor, is making $194,189 a year. They distinguish between their council member, their council vice chair, and their vice president and president of their city council. And so the council president is making $128,583 per year. The vice president is being compensated at $82,662. And then each remaining member of the city council is being paid $74,790 per year. Now, Baltimore City has a population of like 621,000. So we are under 40,000 in the city of Annapolis. So that's a quite different scale. Now, granted, they have, I think they have 11 members in their city council, along with the vice president and the president.
So they have a larger council, they have a larger city, and they're paying them more.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
That is the bottom line. Now, Gaithersburg did an increase in their compensation for their council. That's on that page. So it looks like in July of 2018, they went to 30,000, and then there's a provision for the CPI adjustment, but no more than 500 per year. So the most their compensation could possibly be is 32,000. And then, and that's for the mayor. I'm sorry, that's for the mayor. And then for the council members, it's 24,000. And the most that could possibly be that they're making over the 4-year period of time is then and another 2,000 at 26,000. I did pull from the Anne Arundel County Code what they are compensating their members with. And so the county executive is at 142,000. I don't believe that has been changed. The council chairperson is at 43,350. The vice chair is at 39,780. and the council members are at 38,760.
Tricia, were those the 2018 numbers for the county, I think?
Yes,
Okay.
they didn't change. This is coming out of their ordinance, and I also double checked their code.
Oh, okay.
Tricia, it seems like that what Gaithersburg did, right, of sort of pegging it to CPI is something, I mean, we haven't done here before, have we, except for the COLA provision in the city manager's paycheck, have we?
In my experience, no,
Yeah,
that's the only
I
way
don't
we've
remember that.
handled it in the past. And it doesn't appear as if we've done, I came from the county, by the way, so I worked there until I retired and then decided to come work here. And so I'm familiar with how they've handled it and not handled it over the years. I might have mentioned this last Thursday, I'm not sure. But the reality is it's sometimes politically not within their will to make a change when they are in a down period. And but otherwise, because it's a 4-year period of time before you can revisit it through a commission, through a salary review commission or a council compensation commission, as is in this language, they set out what the rate is in the first year and the second year and the third year of the term, and then the final.
Yeah.
And that's an option to you. I mean, that's an option available to you. And I'm just trying to share with you the different ways that other municipal and county governments have done it. The only county I'm considering is Anne Arundel. Just not that's the only information I've gone outside of municipal government for you.
I guess just one thought, and I haven't paid that much attention since I haven't been on the council, but I mean like you showed the different CPI numbers per year, right?
Right.
But like, did the council do in any of those years a COLA for all employees that look like that number, or has there just been in the last 4 years? Like,
In the other jurisdictions, because
no, in the city,
No.
yeah. So they have,
No.
yeah. Okay.
No, so when they decided the last time and any other time before, that's the best I can tell, is they just decided on what was the compensation going to be, and that's what the compensation was.
No,
for
I'm just
all
saying that,
employees.
like in the city as a whole, like in the last 4 years, have they for all the employees of the city, has there been COLAs enacted?
Yes, we were actually doing pretty well. We negotiated a 4-year agreement for each of our bargaining units.
Mhm.
We got halfway through it, and then COVID said hello.
Sure.
And but we did it on the basis of projections, revenue projections, and because the city is relatively stable around real estate appraisals and the like, really contributing to that
Sure.
that base. We work with our city manager to feel very comfortable that that was the right thing to do until it wasn't. And so
Gotcha.
we had worked out for each of those years. I can send that to you if you like, what our cost of livings were for each of those years. Bear in mind that when we negotiated with our police officers, they traded a portion of their cost of living, in some cases the entire cost of living, in order to have take-home cars.
Yep.
And so in order to afford that, they had to make well, I wouldn't call it a concession, but they had to figure out how to afford that, and that included what would have otherwise gone to them in compensation relative to what others were getting. So I can give you that if you like,
I'm just
but
curious.
know that we attempted renegotiation for FY21, and we are in discussion now for FY22. No one expected COVID to
Exactly.
hit us as hard as it has, and while some parts of our income are stable, so to speak. We have a lot of loss of revenue in the city. And we're trying to negotiate filling that hole.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, and just to sort of start on the table of how I'm starting to think about this as we do it, right? Like it makes some sense that right, until things get back on track and we're not offering COLAs to all of the employees of the city, or whether we can negotiate with those who are, unions and right, like usually what happens, right? Like if you can bargain it, then you extend it to everyone else who's not covered by the unions, right? That's sort of usually
Right. And that's, a lot of that's important from a pay philosophy standpoint. Yeah. And, I can tell you when you get into situations where, well, just because the bargaining unit has decided that that's what they're only going to accept. And I don't mean that like we're butting heads. It's just that in the agreement phase, if that's what they want, and then you say, well, yeah, but if we give it to you, we really can't afford to do it for this group. You could have salary compression. You could have, you have a lot of impact that might happen around your leadership in terms of rank and file wanting to be promoted and what kind of benefit structures. So it's just really healthy to be consistent in your pay philosophy, so that if when you do negotiate, you also consider what kind of impact that's going to be financially on the otherwise affected employees.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, my initial thinking, right, is that until things return to normal, where you can be negotiating those and then offering them to all the employees. Frankly, the council and the mayor and the city manager should all be in that same boat, right? Right. Philosophy from my perspective, right? And I think the argument in the past has always been you only get to look at this once every 4 years, so you have to think prospectively. But I thought it was interesting. You said like in Gaithersburg, they've put some sort of provision in there that can go up. I mean, theoretically, you could say, when the city of Annapolis offers a COLA to all of its employees, you all benefit from it too, right? Like, and just leave it at that and see if over the next 4 years we hopefully get back to a place where you can do that. Would somewhat be kind of a clean way to do it, I guess. But
right, and
we're talking about
I think the intent of the language that I see in some of these other jurisdictions is to say, well, if we can't do it, we won't do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Which I think is important. Yeah.
Would you like me to get for you ECI information? Are you interested in that? Or I will absolutely cover the other two items, which is to make sure you have what our employee COLAs have been, and then just kind of a legislative look at whether there's been any roles and responsibility changes to the mayor, to the city manager, and to the council members, so that you have that to maybe inform the conversation that did or didn't come to fruition from the last report.
I think that'd be really helpful.
Okay.
Allison, I spoke to Ashley Leonard about the majority and minority report issue, and there
Okay.
actually is a change. It's very, very slight though. The majority report recommends for the alderman section, it's probably like 14 lines down. There's a recommendation from the majority for a straight 15,000, and the minority recommends rounding it from 13.5 to 15,000. So it's a very, very, and I think Joe may have mentioned it earlier. It's a very, very slight change, but that is the difference between the majority and the minority reports.
Okay, I see that.
So I just realized my dog was snoring rather loudly. I don't know if you heard it. He's not attending today. Not sitting beside me.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Carrie.
You're welcome.
That's about all I had to share. If there's something else that you think you need that I could hunt down and provide you, please let me know. I know you're on a compressed experience here. I would imagine that the agenda for tomorrow evening's meeting would be inclusive of comments from members of the council. And that other than that, I don't know what else to really put as agenda items, because what I would be providing from this evening's discussion is just going to be documents through email.
Now, will we have an opportunity to ask them questions, or should we submit, our questions now or beforehand, or how does that work?
Well, I think, because Ashley is the one that was the primary staff support last time, I think the way it went was that they literally just set up meetings, and whatever the council wanted to discuss relative to the commission's role is what happened. So I don't know that there was a series of questions that the council members were asked. I don't think so. I think Ashley would have already provided that to us, because she did go through all of her file and pulled out items that she thought were.
Should we give them some guidance on what we would like to hear? I'd like to hear their thoughts about the compensation and the allowances. See if how they feel about it.
Just to give a little input, I don't think all of the alderpersons will be here. So if you want input from all of them, I would recommend doing it by email, and you can email
No,
those.
just the ones that are on tomorrow night. I mean, if they're going to be on, they're going to be talking, aren't they? Or are they just going to be listening?
Yep, they'll be on. They'll have speaking and listening, right?
They'll be providing input, like it's like a public hearing at a city council meeting. They're going to be the ones that are sort of taking on the role as the public at that point.
Right.
You can ask them follow-up questions as it relates to anything that they testify to. My role, just so you guys know, would be to sort of make sure everyone stays on topic here and it doesn't get too sort of far off course outside the purview of your guys' realm here, because there is such a tight timeline for you guys that I don't want you guys to kind of get bogged down with testimony that's unrelated to your function as a commission. But you can ask them follow-up questions, and you can ask them questions during their testimony and have a little bit of a back and forth.
Yeah, and anything that would be follow-up from them would be making sure they understand your limits on time, so that if they need to supply you something else by email, or that, for your consideration, that, respectfully, it'd have to be a pretty fast turnaround so that you can accomplish your job.
Given that Sheila Finlayson has said that she'd like another date, so she can't make tomorrow, how can we handle it? Can we offer her the Wednesday night, or can we offer her and anyone else who can't attend an opportunity from the alderpersons to submit a statement?
Well, I guess you sort of do either or. It's up to you guys.
Yeah.
Because I know Hillary had mentioned earlier that there's sort of a public comment area for people members of the public to submit. So I think worst case scenario, if Alderwoman Finlayson is not able to virtually physically be in front of you, she could submit a comment of some sort to you guys as well. But it's up to you if you want to have another meeting to allow for more council members who can't necessarily make tomorrow to testify before you guys.
Mm-hmm. Joe and Ian, do you have thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was that?
So the question is, we have one alderman that has said that she's not able to make it tomorrow. And she has asked for another date. So that to me implies that she's got some feedback that she'd like to give us. And so I'd like that. I just, I don't know what your restrictions are on meeting perhaps on Wednesday, or do we just say, we'd love to hear from you. Please send us any information that you have.
I'm pretty open.
Yeah, I'm happy to add another other day if it helps. I just, you get into the scheduling thing where, oh, well, you know, that day's not here. Someone else wants to do it a different day. Like, at
Yeah.
some-
So maybe if she's available on Wednesday, that would be great.
Sure.
How does that look, Hillary, for having a available Zoom time? You're on, there you go.
Yeah, it's available early, so like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I could schedule a short meeting, but we have to be done by 6:30. There are 2 meetings at 7.
Okay.
I can make those.
Yeah, that works for me.
I'm good.
Okay. So maybe 5 o'clock would be great.
So Tricia, maybe there's some utility in sending a follow-up email to all of them and be like, you can do it tomorrow night, or you could do it on Wednesday at those times, and see if we could
I can do that.
some of them down. It couldn't hurt.
I can do that.
Okay, thanks.
And then we'll just go ahead and do an agenda for both evenings, Hillary,
It's
for
the same kind of, you know.
Yeah.
publication. How about that?
It's sort of a procedural question. Have you guys elected a chair or done any of that sort of
Mhm.
fun stuff?
Yes,
That's-
Ian's the chair.
Oh, congratulations. I just wanted to
Thank you. Which I guess which begs the question: have we heard from Faye? I feel a little uncomfortable sort of going forward without.
No. I think Hillary tried to see if she had a private email to reach out to her, but I haven't been successful with her responding to any emails to date.
Who was it? Hillary, was it Sheila who nominated her? Or someone else?
Sorry, I imagine it was because
Yeah, me
she
too.
has nominated her for many things. They work together a lot, so I imagine it was, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
I just sent her invitations to the other, I have an old email for her, so I thought maybe that would work. So I sent her invitations to those, and I'll call the
Okay.
number I have for her as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I can confirm that Alderwoman Finlayson is the one that nominated her. I just pulled up the email.
Okay, good.
I'll send Sheila a note and say, Faye hasn't been here yet. Like, can you want to chime in with her?
Just make sure you sign a chair of the Council Compensation Commission.
Well, those are all the questions I had.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you, Tricia. It's very helpful.
Thanks, Tricia.
you're welcome.
That was great.
You'll get there.
We done?
So, okay.
I guess you also have to figure out how you're going to get together and put your report together. I don't think you need me for
No,
that
we
meeting or that
But-
effort, but
set up a separate Zoom, but
yeah.
set that up when we get to that point.
Well, we're done?
I think so.
Very good.
Yes, as the meetings get added, I'll put them on your calendars and put the Zoom links on them.
Well, thank you very much for your help.
Yes. Thank you, Hillary. Appreciate
Yeah.
that very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Should I
All
make
right.
a motion to adjourn the meeting?
There you go.
So
Go,
that's good.
Joe.
I'll make a motion to